Sometime later in Medea's office, she reflects on her nearly 20 years as the Academy president, admitting that this is the first time something like this has ever happened. Kang responds that he doesn't like this whole top student business. Naturally, both Siegfried and Medea are confused. They ask if he doesn't understand what it means to be part of the star class. They explain that the decision was made by the subspace itself. After a moment, Kang says he still doesn't want to accept it. Siegfried is puzzled. Back in Medea's office, she asks Siegfried if he's angry that the boy took his granddaughter's spot. Siegfried replied that it made no sense to go against the will of the subspace, as it was designed to find heroes. If Kang was chosen as the best cadet, they would respect that decision. However, if Kang had incredible abilities, an exceptional physique, or extraordinary experience, he would have understood. But Kang was just a boy who hadn't even fully matured. Yet it was undeniable that Kang's cuts and movements carried a master-level concept of swordsmanship, something Siegfried had been searching for his entire life. Even more shocking, upon examining Kang's body, Siegfried found it to be fragile and unconditioned with no signs of physical training. It was as if something impossible existed within him. For the first time in a long while, Siegfried felt a strange sense of competitiveness. He wanted to understand how this was possible. The problem, though, was that he couldn't fathom how a boy of his granddaughter's age could possess such skills. Medea, being her usual eccentric self, joked that, despite his age, Kang was worth trying something with. She then asked Siegfried for his opinion. He asked if she knew what people at the Academy called women like her. She dared him to say it out loud. Siegfried spelled it out letter by letter. B-I-T-C-H. Medea lost her mind, but back to Kang. It seems he managed to get himself downgraded to the wolf class. That's the best he could do, as all he wanted was to avoid being the top student. Not long ago, there was a heated debate about putting him in one of the best classes, or at least the tiger class. But Medea insisted that the matter remain a secret. Kang's plan was to join a weaker class and live quietly, avoiding the power struggles of the stronger groups. Considering everything that happened, ending up in the wolf class wasn't too bad. When he enters the classroom, everyone turns to stare at him, obviously because of the badge on his chest. After a moment, they return to their conversations, and Kang relaxes, hoping they'll stop looking at him. All he wants is to be ignored. As he sits down, relieved that no one is talking to him, he feels the peace of being a solitary man with his own lifestyle. Then, someone calls out to him. He turns and sees the red-haired girl from earlier. She thanks him for everything he did. He doesn't respond, so she clarifies that she's talking about the test. She uses formal honorifics, which feels unnecessary since they're the same age. Kang tells her there's no need to thank him. Anyone would have done the same in that situation. At that moment, he feels like a hypocrite. Everyone thinks he saved the girl out of heroism, but he was just trying to save himself. He introduces himself as Kang Guillaume Ma, and she introduces herself as Chloe. Kang politely says it's nice to meet her, and that he didn't expect them to be in the same class. Internally, though, he's wondering who Chloe is. After playing the game countless times, he has no idea who this girl is. He knows the main story begins later during the war against the demon tribe. If Chloe doesn't appear there, it means she's just another ordinary person like him. He asks her to keep everything that happened a secret, and she agrees. Chloe says she wants to ask him something, but the professor interrupts, telling everyone to sit down. They agree to talk later. The professor slams a notebook on the desk and congratulates the class on their admission. He announces that they now carry the pride of the hero Valor Hoken. He introduces himself as Li Wanbin, the wolf class instructor. He orders everyone to change into their physical training uniforms, as training starts in 30 minutes. A boy with glasses asks what today's training objective is. Kang guesses the answer before it's even said. Saitama's regimen. He wonders if this means everyone will end up bald. Kang approaches the instructor, who immediately asks what Kang Guillaume Ma wants. Kang is confused about how the instructor already knows his name. He says he isn't feeling well. The professor ponders for a moment and remarks that such basic training might not be helpful for the school's top cadet, suggesting Kang should go to the star class instead. Kang immediately knows that Medea must have told all the instructors. He quickly clarifies that he only needs to use the bathroom. And then the scene shifts as he returns to start the training. Outside, Kang begins running with the others, or more accurately, behind them, as he's clearly unfit. He's struggling and hasn't even finished the warm-up when Chloe catches up to him and asks if it's really that hard. Kang denies it, insisting he's fine. He had already completed 5 laps and was making decent progress. However, she mentions that she's already on her ninth lap. The poor guy is confused. She simply tells him to keep trying and runs ahead. He never imagined he was this unprepared. Later, after the training, Kang was back at his place surrounded by empty bottles. He slammed one on the table, utterly exhausted and starving. After just 1 week at the academy, he encountered an unexpected problem. The scene shifted to the cafeteria, where he entered desperately, saying he was starving and asking for pork. The lady at the counter looked to the side and asked where his meal ticket was. That's when he realized he needed a ticket to get food. He told her not to worry, and that he'd go get one. But when he saw the price, 50,000 won, he was devastated. Now sitting there drinking whatever he could afford, he was frustrated. This place charged so much for food, nearly what he used to spend in an entire month to survive. Suddenly, a system notification appeared, stating that his physical stats had reached level 12. The more power he gained, the fewer restrictions would apply. Additionally, he could now wield a weapon up to 38 centimeters long. This made him realize that his efforts hadn't been in vain. Looking in the mirror, he noticed his body becoming more defined. His evolution was progressing rapidly, likely thanks to the blessing of the sword god. As the effects increased, he thought he might soon be able to wield a small sword. On the day of the ceremony, he had been afraid to use his sword. But now, when he wasn't holding one, he felt strange. He began to wonder if the system was messing with his psyche. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. He opened it and asked who it was. It was Chloe, who politely asked if she could come in. She asked if she was bothering him, and he replied, no, as he had just been lying down. She mentioned that she hadn't seen him in the cafeteria all week and wanted to know if he was okay. He said he was fine and explained that he had been bringing food from other places. Chloe said she understood and that she wouldn't worry. She then explained that she was planning to cook dinner and wanted to buy some ingredients, but it seemed he wasn't interested. The very next moment, Kang was already outside, telling her to hurry up as he walked ahead. He mentioned that he could cook and would take care of it. Some time passed and Chloe had already finished her meal, praising how delicious it was. Kang noticed that all the food was gone. He said he checked the fridge and found a lot of fish, and he curiously asked why there was so much. Chloe explained that she lived near the beach, and Kang commented that it was perfect because his specialty was cooking fish. He decided to prepare another dish to show off his sashimi skills. The problem, though, was the sword god's blessing. He asked if she had a long knife that looked like a sword. She showed him her sword and asked if it would work, but Kang decided never mind and opted to handle it differently. He concluded he'd have to finish the dish in 30 seconds. Activating the blessing to remove pain and the sword god's blessing, he managed to prepare the fish completely in 21 seconds. Even he was impressed with the masterpiece he had created. Chloe asked how he was so good at cooking, and he replied that he had worked part-time at a Japanese restaurant. However, Chloe didn't even seem to know what part-time work was. Noticing the gap in their social statuses, Kang simply said he was happy she enjoyed the meal. She then said not to worry about the dishes, as she would handle them. Kang went outside to observe the moon, feeling completely satisfied after a week of hard work. Suddenly there was a loud commotion inside. He turned to see that Chloe clearly had never washed dishes before. Then a book fell off a shelf and some pages opened. He noticed it looked like a diary and accidentally started reading. He saw a line where Chloe mentioned how she had received help from someone during class and felt she needed to repay the favor. He thought it was cute that she had a diary at her age decorated with stickers. Without meaning to, he flipped through and read another line. It said the person who saved her was in the same class, and now her heart wouldn't stop racing. She wanted to talk to him, but didn't know how. Kang thought he would feel shy, but instead, he found it cute. Curious, he continued reading and he found a bunch of "I love you" written everywhere. Good grief, he thought. Maybe it was time to run. Just then, Chloe saw what he had seen, dropped her glass, and asked if he had read it. The story shifted to Chloe's family background. Heroic families gained honor by killing monsters. But within these institutions, there were those who exploited the weak to handle problems that other families couldn't resolve directly. An organization of shadows emerged, a family known as Auditor of Sicily. This family used assassination to maintain order. Because of this, children born into the family underwent mental conditioning before puberty. They suppressed their emotions and endured harsh training, all to become assassins before the age of 15. That was the age when Chloe killed for the first time. An old man told her she shouldn't deny her talent as an assassin. It was something she heard repeatedly before reaching adulthood. The constant training distorted her mentality and created a shadow that hit her heart long before she could recover. By the time Chloe entered the academy, any child from the Sicily family would undoubtedly qualify for the dragon class or higher. However, they always ended up in the lower common classes due to family tradition. The old man warned her never to draw attention to herself. That's how Chloe realized that even at the academy, she couldn't do as she pleased. She decided to accept her family's faith since there was no escape. She thought everything at this place would be predictable until someone appeared. Kang. Our boy yelled at those bastards to stop, asking if they had lost their minds. In that subspace, Chloe was meant to experience death for the first time. She wasn't afraid, knowing it was part of the plan to remain in a weak class. Calmly, she was ready to face death because that's how she had always lived. But the fate that seemed so clear and defined was severed at that moment. It was as if the sun had broken through the clouds. She saw someone wielding their sword for a purpose beyond themselves. He stood in front of her to protect her. As a child, she used to read a bedtime story about a princess trapped in a castle, and the person the princess loved. At that moment, her face turned red, and her heart felt like it would explode. She could only think of one thing. Was this the feeling called love? Back in the present, Kang was confused. The tension in the air was palpable, and he felt awkward as they stared at each other. He had no idea what to do or why she seemed so upset. Trying to change the mood, he commented on how beautiful the moon was that night. He thanked her for the meal and said he was leaving as he waved goodbye. Chloe then asked if he had seen it. He asked what she meant. She said, "Obviously." Embarrassed, he stammered, saying that if it was about the book, he hoped she was studying hard. But she knew it was the diary. The problem was that in that moment, she seemed like a completely different person. He kept insisting he hadn't seen anything, but she kept pressing him to stop lying. After some back and forth, he admitted that he had seen it. The instant he confessed, he felt a shift in the atmosphere as Chloe began drawing her sword. Kang was bewildered, wondering why she was doing this. Looking out the window, he realized he was on the 4th floor, making it impossible to jump. The only way out was through the door, but he was trapped in the room with her. As she dragged the sword along the ground, slowly advancing, Kang noticed her lifeless eyes and motionless pupils. Her face was void of emotion. He was certain now she was a yandere. It dawned on him that during their conversations, she would suddenly shift her energy. Now that she was acting entirely differently, it was clear she had two personalities. Reading the diary had been the trigger for this behavior, and her intent to kill him was stronger than even those brothers. Kang began thinking of a way to escape. Since he had cut the fish in 21 seconds, he still had 9 seconds left of the blessings effect to use. The problem was that his sashimi knife was in his room. The knife he had used to cut the fish was nearby, but with her current posture, she would sever his arm or head before he could grab it. Then he spotted a box cutter on the table. At that moment, Chloe lunged at him. Kang grabbed the box cutter, wishing he could have resolved this through conversation. He activated the sword god's blessing, which proclaimed, "May the blessing be with you." As Chloe charged, Kang commented that her hair was a bit long. He made a clean cut. In the next scene, Chloe was lying on the bed. When she woke up, she seemed disoriented, asking where Ma was. She recalled looking back at him when he was by the window while she had been washing dishes. She wondered where her katana was, then noticed it lying nearby. Feeling relieved, she remembered that she often lost consciousness when using the katana. Most of the time, after killing someone, her only memory would be of the old man praising her and reminding her never to deny her talent as an assassin. She fell face first onto her pillow, frustrated about fainting just when he had been in her room. She felt like her head was about to explode. Chloe wondered if she had said anything strange while unconscious. That's when she noticed the box cutter on the floor and questioned why it was there. She touched her hair and realized it was shorter. Becoming confused, she looked in the trash and saw the hair he had trimmed and disposed of. As the unstable yandere she was, she interpreted this as an act of kindness. She thought he was incredibly gentle for even giving her a haircut. She immediately opened her diary and began writing about how much she loved Geoma. Meanwhile, outside, Kang was throwing up. Somehow, he had managed to escape the situation by activating the blessing. The problem was that he had used the ability for 5 seconds longer than the remaining 9 seconds, leaving him completely drained. Sitting on a bench, he thought about how all the energy from dinner was gone. He began questioning why Chloe fought the way she did. Normally, a swordsman would aim to disarm or immobilize their opponent. However, Chloe's fighting style made it abundantly clear that her intent was always to kill without hesitation. She aimed for vital points with her attacks. It was almost as if she were a specialist in ambushes. When she attacked him, he genuinely felt his life was in danger. Instinctively, he tried to cut off her head. Thankfully, the box cutter was too short, and she only ended up with a haircut. Afterward, it seemed she fainted, and he was grateful that everything worked out in the end. Life at the academy was far from easy. Kang remembered that before falling into this game, he had been a more ambitious person. In the world he came from, he had stood at the pinnacle as a master of sashimi knives. But here in this world, everyone seemed bound to their role. The game was called Blessing of Miracles, because that was the blessing the true protagonist would receive. There was also the Blessing of Valor from a figure named Valor Joaquin. As far as Kang could remember, these were the only legendary blessings in the game. The main mission was to save the world from the Demon King. The protagonist was chosen by the Holy Sword and the Demon Sword known as Balmung. Meanwhile, Kang had been chosen by a sashimi knife. He slapped himself trying to make sense of why he had been thrown into this situation. All these events at the academy were making him forget what his original goals were. While he had some knowledge of the key characters, he didn't fully understand how this world worked. What he did know was that he had been at the academy for a week, and according to the game storyline, the time had come. The protagonist's blessing should have activated by now, and he would begin attending the academy. This meant the real story was about to start. Even though Kang hadn't completed the game, he at least knew the first half. For now, the best course of action was to stick to the official storyline. If he remembered correctly, the major events would kick off in the second semester of the third year. At that point, sensing the birth of a new hero, the demon race would launch an attack on the academy. This battle would escalate into a full-scale war between demons and humanity. That's when a world war would begin. It was undeniable that the plot was incredibly cliched. It was during this stage of the story that Kang, who had only been playing for the waifus and fun, decided to stop playing. But the terrifying part was that this war was inevitable in this world. The question now was whether he would die in the process. For now at least, he had 3 days to prepare, either to find a way to escape this fantasy world, or in the worst case, get stronger and survive. There was a game full of waifus meant for people to enjoy themselves, so surely there had to be a happy ending somewhere. The protagonist of this world would undoubtedly survive, but Kang needed power to protect himself. At the same time, he couldn't draw too much attention to himself. Otherwise, he would also be drafted to fight against the Demon King's army. Today's events made Kang realize he needed to be much more careful when using the Blessing of Pain. He checked his own stats and saw that his performance was quite impressive. Strangely, it seemed as though more information appeared on the interface every day. Some stats like mental strength were straightforward enough, but one confused him: assimilation rate. He clicked on it, but a window popped up, stating that access was restricted. The more he tried to understand, the more questions arose. For now, the most important thing was that he needed a real weapon. He couldn't just keep relying on the Blessing of Pain for 30 seconds every time. He needed a sword that wouldn't trigger the blessing. Fortunately, he knew that next month there would be a series of exams, and the reward for completing the training was a sword called Murasami. It was a rank B blade, and if he could master it, it would be enough to graduate from the academy. Its size ensured that the sword god's blessing wouldn't activate, so he could use it as his primary weapon. In the end, he would have to do more than he wanted. That's when someone called out to him. He turned to look. With cyan-colored hair, it was obvious who it was. Looking battered, she announced that this was her spot. Kang just stared at her, dumbfounded and unsure of what to say. He stood there frozen. "Say something, man," she yelled, asking if he could move aside. "Bossy much?" Kang thought. The poor otaku stood there thinking how surreal she looked. No matter how many times he saw her, he spaced out for a second without even realizing it. It seemed like he was about to get up, but she said he didn't need to leave, just sit next to her. Even though she was beautiful, he wondered what this nonsense about the bench being hers was about. After all, it was a public space. But he decided to avoid any conversation to steer clear of the heroine of this story. Still, the girl looked so battered that he couldn't stop glancing at her, thinking how stunningly beautiful she was. Out of nowhere, she looked up and said she liked sitting there because the stars were most visible from that spot. Caught off guard, Kang didn't know what to say. Clearly struggling with his poor social skills, he began to wonder if this really was Abel, the granddaughter of the Sword Saint. the protagonist who was notoriously hard to approach. She turned to him and asked if he also used a sword. Kang was confused as to how she knew that. She explained that her grandfather had told her. He mentioned that swordsmen have a distinct look in their eyes, and this makes Kang worry for a moment that his secret had been exposed. Kang remained perplexed. Her colorful hair, those antenna-like strands, and her sharp, slanted eyes. Was it just his imagination, or did she kind of look like an insect? Abel asked if he wanted to hold her sword, confirming she knew he recognized her. Kang was confused since he didn't think she suspected him of anything. He kindly rejected her offer, saying he isn't excited about it. However, he found it odd that she asked that, given everyone at the school knew who Abel was. He admitted he sort of knew her. In response, she said she didn't know him,